Also, the idea that there was a one original manuscript of the Quran, that's also untrue, because when Muhammad died, there was no Quran in existence. Okay, that's something that people have to realize. He was illiterate. He didn't write it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
In fact, tradition says that the angel Gabriel would come down, would slap Muhammad upside the head, get his attention, okay, show him this stone tablet upon which Allah had written the Quran, and he would begin to recite it, okay? The problem was they never knew when he was going to recite these things, because these were not regular preaching services. So he'd be walking along the road and suddenly he would fall down in a fit. That's how he would recite.
Yes.
So he'd be on the ground, he'd be jerking and all, and foaming at the mouth, and then he would get up and begin to recite. Well, at first, his followers just simply tried to remember what he said. But then, some of them began to die in battle. And if they were the only ones present with the prophet when he had one of these recitations, then
it was lost.
It was lost. They decided, well, you know, we better start writing these things down. But again, the problem was they never knew when it was going to happen. So he would be in a tent, and all of a sudden he'd fall down in a fit, and they'd yell, quick, somebody grab something. And they would grab whatever was near, a piece of bone or a piece of pottery, the shoulder blade of a lamb or a mat somebody was sitting on. They begin to write on it. Or if they were outside walking by the way and Muhammad fell down in a fit, they would cover him and would reach up and grab a palm leaf and begin to write on that, or a piece of bark. The Hadith said, and again it's considered every bit as inspired as the Quran, the Hadith said that the camels would sometimes eat the palm leaves upon which the Quran was written. And over time the bark began to disintegrate.
Sure.
So what happened was when Muhammad finally died, all his followers had to gather up all these bits and pieces of stuff that the Quran was written on.
Try to put it together.
To put together to form a text of the Quran. They say, well, do Muslims admit that? The scholars do. They know it. And the average Muslim knows, because he's been lied to. He or she has been told that it's perfect Arabic, heavenly, you know, and the original manuscript was given to Muhammad. He collated it and looked over it. He was illiterate. He couldn't read or write.
Right,
okay. Now, as far as this idea that...
we have about 10 minutes or so.
Okay, I will be done. I just want to give you a couple more things. So we're on our last point, but I think these are interesting.
This is great. I love this.
This idea that all the Qurans in the world were absolutely in agreement with each other, that's also a fabrication. Because after Muhammad died, there were all kinds of Qurans floating around. Some had 150 surahs, some had 114 surahs, some had 100. And then with regard to the surahs in each of these Qurans, they would differ from surah to surah. You know, the second surah of one Quran would differ from the second surah of another Quran, and how many verses were there. It was confusing, it was chaos, until finally a caliph by the name of Uthman said, enough is enough. I'm going to make one text of the Quran, and you're going to accept it under the penalty of death. He said, I'm going to gather up all these other Qurans and I'm going to burn them because they're an embarrassment. And Muslim scholars know that the Caliph Uthman standardized the text of the Quran. In fact, the Shiites point out that when he put this Quran together, he purposely left out 25% of what he didn't agree with. Okay?
Oh, wow. So
he kind of left some things out. And
so one-man authority, as opposed to the Bible that was canonized and
exactly
by many minds.
Many. And Western scholars, here's the thing though, Western scholars like Arthur Jeffrey, who taught at Columbia University, and many others have found these missing manuscripts, okay? They have found, you know, these other Qurans that had all these other, and were able to reconstruct basically. In fact, in one of his books, Jeffrey gives 90 pages of listing the contradictory variances in the text of the Quran. So to say it's perfect and flawless, it's not true.
Complete deception.
Complete deception.
Yes.
Quickly, give you just a few others. There are scientific errors in the Quran. We are told in the Quran that a man wanted to discover where the sun went every day when it set. So he got in his camel, he followed the sun, and he wanted to see where this disk went to. And by the way, in those days, they believed that the sun and the moon was only as big as they perceived it, the size of a dinner plate, basically. And in the Quran, this man followed the sun till it set, and he discovered it went into a muddy pond at night, this disk, the size of a dinner plate. And of course, there was darkness then. And in the morning, it arose out of this muddy pond, and there was light. See, scientific errors. Historical errors. The Quran says that Alexander the Great was a Muslim.
Oh,
A monotheist, a righteous man who lived to a ripe old age.
oh,
Well, we know that he was not a Muslim, he was a pagan.
yes.
He was not a monotheist, he was a polytheist.
Yes.
He wasn't a righteous man, he was a homosexual.
Yes.
And he didn't live to a ripe old age, he lived to be about 32 or so, in his early 30s. How about linguistic errors? One of the most fascinating studies on the Quran is that Muhammad made up all these speeches, and then he put them into the mouths of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Mary, okay? But by doing that, he betrayed that they were frauds. You say, well, how? Because he used words and phrases that were not around that were not around when the patriarchs lived, but had came into existence much later, like during the time of Muhammad, the 6th, 7th century. Okay,
Yes.
It would be like this. It would be like me, Barbara, writing a book and saying, well, Muhammad said that when he's in Chicago, he likes to eat at McDonald's. And you read that and go, Muhammad couldn't have said that. There were no McDonald's in Chicago. There was no Chicago back then. He does the same thing when he says, when he's got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob saying that we are Muslims, we live and die for Islam. Can't be, okay? Because those words, Muslim, Islam, didn't even come into existence until much later.
Yes.
And finally, we know that Muhammad was an illiterate man. He was a camel driver and all. And they would sit around, okay, because Muhammad got a lot of the things in the Bible very confused, okay? And what happened, we believe, is that he would sit around at night around the campfires, and at these campfires there would be maybe a Jew, a Christian, a Zoroastrian, a Sabaean, a pagan, a Hindu, okay? These were the trade routes, okay? This was the trade route. So you had a lot of caravans coming through, and they would sit around the campfire at night all telling their stories about their religions. Well, Muhammad didn't write anything down because he was illiterate, so he would just try to remember things. But they got all jumbled up in his mind and all twisted around. And so when he wrote these things down, he just messed everything up. Give you an example of how, to show you how the Quran gets everything confused. It says in the Quran that Haman, now this is Esther's time, right? Haman.
Right.
Haman lived in Egypt, worked under Pharaoh, opposed Moses, built the Tower of Babel, during which time Noah's flood took place. But one of Noah's sons refused to get into the ark and drowned, and the ark landed on Mount Judy.
Oh, my.
Okay? The Quran takes the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and puts it to Abraham. See, again, they're all sitting around the campfire telling these stories, and Muhammad's listening, and he's not writing anything down because he can't, and so they're getting all kind of twisted up and confused.
Sure,
and so when he writes them down, they're all jumbled up, okay? One last one. The Quran says the mother of Jesus was Miriam. Miriam was a sister of Moses.
Yes.
And Miriam was the sister of Aaron and Moses. So he gets Miriam and Mary mixed up. Okay?
Yes.
Now, a lot of Muslims will say, well, the Bible's corrupted. The Quran is true, the Bible's corrupted. But we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, first of all,
Yes.
that, we're talking about the Old Testament now, date back 200 years before Christ. The Quran came, 600 years after Christ.
Yes.
And in over 25 places in the Quran, Muhammad appeals to the people of the book, in the book of the people. And that means the Jews, the Christians.
Yes.
And what he basically says is, if you want to know that what I'm telling you is accurate, go to the people of the book, let them check their book, and they'll tell you that what I'm saying is true. Which, if you think about it, the younger always appeals to the older.
Yes.
That which is established always the newer always appeals to that which is established, okay? The lesser always appeals to the greater. So by the fact that Muhammad was encouraging his people to go to the Bible to check out what he was saying was accurate, the lesser was appealing to the greater.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So real quickly, what are those 6 deceptions again?
The 6 deceptions of Islam is that Islam is a religion of love. Islam is a religion of peace.
Yes.
Allah is the one true God, just another name for the God of the Bible.
Yes.
Muhammad was God's prophet. That Muslims believe in the same Jesus Christ that Christians believe in. And finally, that the Quran is the Word of God.
Which today you have shared are all deceptions.
All deceptions.